Hello from the gutters of New York.
In the late 1970s, a cold-blooded killer stalked the streets of New York City.
I am a monster. I am the son of Sam.
The ballistics guy and I believe that we have a serial killer here.
He preyed on the young and vulnerable. It wasn't good detective work that led to the killer. It was a parking ticket.
My ego was deflated when I saw David Berkowitz sitting in that office. He looked like a little tub of butter.
The police declared the case solved, but some people questioned whether the convicted killer acted alone.
I started finding some things that just didn't jive with the story, with the official story.
Was the mild-mannered man part of a satanic cult whose members are still following their bloodlust? We investigate the son of Sam, one of America's deranged killers.
David Berkowitz is a typical inadequate personality. This is a man that can't make it in everyday life. He's the kind of guy that waits on line at a bank, and when he finally gets to the teller, she closes the window. That's the way life is for him.
Growing up in the Bronx in the 50s and 60s, David Berkowitz appeared to lead a normal childhood. He was adopted as a baby, raised by caring step-parents, and played baseball. Yet, in his 1993 interview, the killer claimed there was always something else beneath the surface.
As a child, I had been possessed by an evil spirit. I believe even as a child, Satan had been reaching out to me, that he had chosen me for something. He was preparing the way for me to do something for him long before I even had any knowledge of his existence, you see. And it just seemed like everything that happened it was like destiny. It was my destiny.
He stabbed two random women. They survived, and Berkowitz escaped undetected. But the life of anonymous loner had taken an irrevocable turn. Home with her parents on July 29, 1976, he was sitting with her girlfriend outside her home when a stranger approached and opened fire. Her parents heard the gunshots from inside the house.
January the 30th, 1977.
Christine Freund and her boyfriend, whose name was John Deal, had been out that night and went to a movie.
Afterwards, over wine, they talked about setting a wedding date and how many children they'd have.
And after they were done there, they walked down the street towards the car that they came in, and they were sliding on the ice and fooling around like young lovers would do.
Just after midnight, as they embraced in their car, their future was shattered. Lieutenant Richard Conlon was coming in for his night shift at the police station.
I was told that a young person was shot at up near the Forest Hills station.
John DL escaped unharmed, but Christine Freund was hit twice in the head. She died within hours. 5 weeks later, and just 50 meters away, there was an attack on a college student walking alone.
Here's a young girl coming home from Columbia University, and out of nowhere comes this moron with a gun and puts it in her face and blows her head off.
The gunman had hidden his weapon in a plastic bag.
She wouldn't have seen it until he was right on top of her.
She had probably a sense of what was going to happen to her because she had pulled her books up in front of her face.
You see the school books with a bullet hole in the middle of it, and you see the girl's face blowing off. It affected me in such a way that I went home that night and cried my eyes out.
At first, there was nothing to link the death of Virginia Voskerichian with any of the other attacks.
We were looking for somebody who operates 12 to 8. This happened at 7:30 at night.
Anyone seen in the area at the time? Have you been able to make any connections here at all?
We have one person running from the scene described to us as a young teenager.
There has been some speculation tying this sort of a shooting, this sort of a killing with that of Miss Freund, January 30th.
At this point in our investigation, we have no reason to believe that the cases are connected. The ballistic evidence that has not been available to us at this time, I have no report at all on that.
One of the problems you have with firearms identification, identifying bullets, is that some of them are too deformed for identification. The lead gets deformed when it hits the body, hits something else, so that you cannot make the comparison.
But evidence sometimes comes to light almost by accident. When Carl Denaro was shot, he was with Rosemary Keenan in her car.
She was cleaning the car out. She had an old plaid blanket, and when she pulled it out, a bullet fell out.
I get a beep to call the ballistics lab, and I call Detective Simmons, and he informs me, Joe, we have a match. When I brought that back to my bosses and said that the ballistics guy and I believe that we have a serial killer here, they went nuts. They said, what are you trying to do, panic the city?
In the light of the ballistics evidence, the police began to look for patterns that would link what had seemed like 5 random shootings. Virginia's case perplexed detectives. She was a diligent student at a prestigious university. She had no boyfriend, no enemies. She was walking alone.
Berkowitz was paying close attention. Captain Borelli was quoted in the mass media as saying that the killer appeared to dislike women. Berkowitz responded by leaving a letter on the side of his next deck. The slaying of Valentina Sorani and her boyfriend Alexander Saul on the service road of the Hutchinson River Parkway in the Bronx.
And I think he started out by saying that he's not a woman hater. And for the first time in my letter, he used the expression son of Sam.
Sam Carr.
Sam Carr had a dog named Harvey, which he usually kept out in his yard behind his house on Warburton Avenue. And that house backed up against 35 Pine Street, where Berkowitz lived. This is a letter that David Berkowitz sent to the Carr family, and states the following. I have asked you kindly to stop that dog from howling all day long, yet he continues to do so. I pleaded with you. I told you how this is destroying my family. We have no peace, no rest. My life is destroyed now. I have nothing to lose anymore. I can see that there shall be no peace in my life or my family's life until I end yours.
One of the interesting things about an inadequate personality, if they become paranoid and they start to suspect people of all kinds of plots, it makes him the central figure, and it also gives him control over life because he can decide what they're doing, take steps to remedy it, and deal with it. When he was writing letters to Jimmy Breslin, the columnist, he was doing that to make sure he gets attention. He wanted his name in press. Part of what he did was glorify or romanticize the killings. After all, would you want to be known as a crazed, irrational killer?
It was the biggest thing. Let's put it this way. It was the biggest thing in the headlines, biggest thing on the news. So everywhere you turned, you couldn't forget it.
For the type of killer that Berkowitz was, reading about his exploits in the paper, reading about the fear he created, reading about the theories, which may have been very divergent, were fantastically exciting. It was the greatest thing he could ever have. The more theories, the more fear, the more people complained about the incompetence of the police, the greater the thrill, the greater the excitement.
We're dealing with a serial killer, apparently with no known motive, killing innocent young people.
We'd have to get him before the act. We'd have to get him in an act.
So we come up with some schemes. We got some mannequins, and we dressed them up as women, and we would sit in the car with them as lovers.
One link between the incidents was their proximity to the network of highways that crisscrossed New York. The killer clearly planned a quick escape.
We knew we had 5 separate shootings, and we had to try to put them all together.
The witnesses that survived gave us sketches, and each sketch was different than the other sketch. When you're the witness of a violent crime that you're directly involved in, and you see a man come up, or anybody come up with a gun and start shooting, the only thing that stays in your mind is the flash of that gun. You don't really see a face.
Still, police did their best to create a description of the suspect. A white male, 25 to 30 years old, 1 meter 80 tall, medium build, with dark hair. He was known to police and the press as the .44 caliber killer.
There are some people that are quite good in remembering faces and what people are wearing, but when you have so many shootings and eyewitnesses giving their version of who they saw leaving the scene, you're going to get a lot of variation there. So I would consider that type of evidence generally unreliable.
Good evening. In New York early this morning, the .44 caliber killer tried to kill again.
20-year-old